All right, how you doing today? This is Ron from OAS Hobby. I'm going to be doing a quick tutorial on the switch frame. All right, this is our new frame that can run both analog and HD. You can find them at GetFPV on our website at oashobby.com. So I'm gonna do two builds simultaneously. I'm gonna do a lot of cutaways and coming back to it. I'm gonna do a lot of the soldering work and things like that off camera, and then we'll cut straight to assembly. All right. So let's get started. Okay, one of the first things you'll notice about the difference between an analog and a HD switch is the PDB mounting and flight controller mounting. On the analog, you want to use the nylon nuts that come with it for the analog system, and then for the HD system, you want to use just the spacers that come with it, so the PDB will give you just enough space to sit your give you just enough space to get your battery strap under there. That's the first difference. All right. From there, it creates the perfect height between the two when you're talking about assembling your VTX and flight controller and PDB and things like that. Okay. When setting up your switch, the first thing you need to recognize when you're doing both HD and analog. So this is your analog system and this is your HD system. This is the rear of the quad where you see those 4 antenna holes right there. That's the rear of your quad. So when you're setting up HD, because your antenna is back here, your power cable needs to go out to the front. And when you're setting up your analog system, see the 4 holes here where your antenna goes? You're not going to be using that because you're using the standard analog system. So your battery connection, your LiPo connection can go to the rear as normal. All right, so here we got all the motors and ESC soldered up. All right, one of the things you got to make sure of when you're soldering up your ESCs, the wires, power wires, both positive and ground, is you got to make sure you clear this hole here. All right, this is the slot where your side plates go through. And if you solder this wire directly on, it goes directly in the path of that hole. So you just got to put it off at a slight little angle so that way it's not in the path of travel for your side plate. See how it's done right there? All right, moving on to HD. So what you have here is everything here is basic. If you've set up a quad before or multi-rotor, whatever you want to call it, this part is all basic. I have everything pre-tinned, everything soldered up and ready to go. A couple things for note. Just like on the analog system, you want to give yourself enough space to make sure these wires don't interfere with these slots here. But you also need to make sure that you give yourself enough slack in these wires. I know it looks messy now, but once you add your antenna, or the stock one or the one that we sell, whatever, doesn't matter. Now you have enough space to get everything in there. Okay, that's the purpose of it. That's why there's so much slack there. Once you tighten these down, it'll give you all the space you need to make sure that you can get a wire in and out of there. I'm sorry, get the bolts in and out of there. But that's the reason that you want to make sure you leave just enough space for enough slack on these wires, so that way you can slide this antenna up underneath there. Okay, so now you'll notice instead we don't do the traditional how everybody else does it, where they mount it to their top plate. This one is designed so that your VTX is 100% protected. All right, you want to make sure that you have your head facing the right way, obviously. Now you'll notice right off the top it doesn't fit. Okay, that's because these need to be trimmed. All right, that's one thing I want to put on here. These absolutely need to be trimmed. So all you do, because they don't make a size that comes specifically the length that we need. So all you do is you get your bolts all the way on there nice and tight. Trim them down. Now it's a perfect fit. Easy day. Now you gotta do is screw it in, you're good to go. All right, we're almost done with the analog switch. I'm gonna show you some final tips and pointers for your last bit of assembly, things that you need to pay attention to when you're assembling it. First thing I want to note, this is a very, very tight fit. Okay, once you get it in and out a few times, it works itself loose and it becomes a little more easy to deal with. But it was designed that way on purpose. Okay, So that way you have the stiffness and the rigidness of the frame when it's completely put together. All right, now, a few things I want you to pay attention to is on the inside here, if you look right there, this is the KISS flight controller, you can see the mini USB port, all right? Micro USB port. There's not a lot of clearance between the edge of the carbon fiber and that port. Same thing with your JST connection if you're running Spectrum satellite, okay? So make sure your bolts are loose, in place, but loose when you go to assemble this. So that way you're not crushing those ports or anything like that. All right, want to always double check to make sure your wires, all your wires are out of the way. You don't have any JST connections here at the bottom or anything like that dangling for when you're about to install, like my camera's still not connected. But so all you do is line up the slots in place and just press. Like you heard me say earlier, it's a very, very, very tight fit. Okay, that side's good. See, just give it a nice little press. All right, and you're in there. All right, now once it's in there and you see all your JST connections are free, all right, you see you got plenty of space for your cables to go in there. Plenty of space for your JST connection, whatever the case may be. And at that point in time, you can screw together some of the things you already had in place. Just tighten it down a little bit. It doesn't have to be assembly, completely tight all the way around. Just give it a little bit of stiffness, so that way it's a little easier to work with. All right. And you're set. Okay, so the way I like to set mine up is I like to put my dip switches right here, readily available. If you're running a push button, you can put a push button there, also readily available. You can access them from the sides here if you need to, or however you decide to do it. But that's where I like to put my dip switches. Some people may put this on top. You can do that as well. All right, it's an easy way to keep everything ready, available, and open. All right. But that is essentially it when you're dealing with your switch frame. All right. You got your. Oh, okay. So one other thing, when you have your analog, if you're running analog or HD, because it does matter. All right. One thing I want you to notice is in your kit there will be two little washers. There are two M washers. There's only two. And they're designed to fit this TPU mounting bracket for your FPV camera. Because this bracket works both with the analog and the HD FPV camera. Now, the analog camera is a little bit smaller than your HD camera. So what you want to make sure you pay attention to is you use those little washers and you put them in the side, and it creates that roughly 1 millimeter space. It eats that space up, so that way your camera fits in there nice and snug. So when I go to tighten these bolts down, now my camera's in there 100%. Okay. Another thing I want to note is there's a lot of different holes here. So you have these two here, you have this one back here, you have these two here if you really wanted to run that one. Now it's designed for different setups for your standoffs. If you want to run camera protection, you could run two standoffs here. The only two standoffs that are required to be put in are the two at the bottom, obviously. You put these two in at the bottom and you're ready to go. And you can choose wherever you want to put the other ones at. There's even a spot back here if you chose to put it back there. It's really up to you. That's one thing we really like doing. We really like giving you guys options. But that's the complete setup of the analog. Looks good, nice and tight. I gotta tidy some things up and then it'll be ready to go. All right, here we go. Wrapping up the HD build. Got a few more things to do. Just want to make some key notes to you. You want to make sure that when you assemble this all the way, like I said, you trim those nylon, your PDB and flight controller nylon screws. You want to make sure you trim those so they fit. And you see the clearance. It's literally less than a millimeter on both sides. So this is what you're looking like when you got all 4 standoffs in there. Also, you don't have to, I wouldn't recommend really wrenching down on this board, you know, just enough to where it's nice and snug. It doesn't move. It's not going to rattle around anywhere. That's one of the most important parts. But some people really like to crank down on their screws. And you don't have to do that. And I wouldn't suggest doing that because you can break the Connex VTX, the ProSight VTX. So that's where we're at right now, ready to rock and roll. All right, here you go. Final product. So this is the OAS race antenna. This is our TPU. This is our design. This is the one, like I said, it's in 2 pieces, but still gives you the optimal range and things like that. We also have one that's the whale tail. Looks exactly like the standard one, but it's a much smaller, more condensed version. All right, all this stuff is very durable. So there's a lot of different configurations you can do when it comes to your standoffs. A lot of people, because it's such an expensive camera, like to put one standoff here. Like I said before in the analog, earlier in the analog video, there's multiple different configurations you can do. For a HD setup, you don't really need the top plate because there's nothing going there, unless you wanted to remove this and use the whale tail version to give your VTX a little more protection. But it's pretty sunk down in there pretty well. You can see that you can get to all your ports very easily. Still, even on the Connex VTX, you can still get to all your, like I said, your micro USB ports very well. And then for the race antenna, we use one of the standoffs in the rear, which gives you, it's what it holds on to. Okay. But outside of that, one more thing to note: when you're doing the HD setup, you don't want to use this top hole for your camera. That's for analog with I think a 2.1 lens or lower. That way you don't see the size of the carbon when you go analog here. So when you do HD, you want to use this bottom bracket more to the rear that gives you that full camera protection. All right, but that's essentially it. Use the same bracket for your TPU mounting. It doesn't move, and they're nice and tight. We also have another camera mount where it has a shield on the front of it. If you like that, it goes in here like that, and it kind of protects your camera a little bit, protects your wiring from dirt and debris, and keeps dust and stuff out. So it uses the same bracket, same everything. So that's it. That's a wrap, guys. Thanks for watching.